Hello, Revelators. Hello, welcome to Revelator Alf for my live stream this morning. Hope you're all well. Basically, I wanted to do a live stream because I had a bit of a nightmare of a ride in this morning on the bike. It's really cold and foggy and freezing fog, and it got me thinking about winter riding tips for you guys. Now, I often get asked about this myself. I've been involved with the emergency services, as some of you may know, for many years, and in that time I've responded to hundreds, if not over 1,000 motorcycle accidents all throughout the year, lots of different causes and everything. And that was actually the impetus for me to start a Helibikes motorcycle safety initiative many years ago, which ended a few years ago as well. I spoke to lots of groups around the country. In fact, the information went around the world as well, so by the power of the internet. So it was something that I still feel very passionately about, but it's always good just to give decent tips around, you know, different elements of riding, especially when it comes to safety. Anyway, so I thought actually some winter riding tips would be quite useful for lots of people, especially if you're relatively new to riding or new to riding in the winter. So that's what I thought. I thought, well, I'd just do that. So I'm just playing with this live stream here as well. So anyway, this is part of the channel. I'm going to do a lot more live streams as well. So please share the videos and subscribe and leave comments below as well, or join in the live chat. And I'll always try and get back to you as soon as I can with any responses as well. But anyway, let's get on to this live stream here. There we go. Right, so basically what I wanted to do is make sure that you can get onto your bike if ever you wanted to, you don't come a cropper. And really, this live stream is all about the best winter riding tips, and I've basically set out about 10 tips for you guys, just things to consider, as opposed to, and this is on top of what you would normally be expected to do, you know, certainly for whenever you're riding, whether it's in the spring, summer, autumn, whatever it is. This is specifically for winter, really. So I suppose one of the first things that you really want to consider is really just thinking seriously and long and hard about the winter hazards. You know, what you're likely to expect. You've got a lot of rain, a lot of mud, and mud that turns into slushy ice, whatever, or chips, road chips have been washed onto the road, that kind of thing. Obviously there might be ice, there might be snow, that kind of thing. So you always got to think about not only the winter hazards actually on the road that affects the road surface, but also that can affect you as well, whether it's howling wind, driving rains, horizontal rain, which is always a pleasure, you know, whether the really freezing cold temperatures as well, you know, that can go right through, you know, they call them the lazy winds. They don't go around you, they go right through you. So this is something that you want to always consider, you know, when you're, you know, thinking about going out riding in the winter. The other thing as well, which I always think is really good as well, is you know, what the Scandinavians would say, I suppose, is there's no such thing as bad weather. It's just inappropriate clothing, and I suppose that's true, isn't it? So dress for winter weather. Dress for winter riding. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to go out in your one-piece leather, you know, motorcycle suit. You know, it might be that you're wearing multiple layered clothing. You're looking at, you know, textile clothing, winter weight jackets and waterproof trousers, that kind of thing. You know, multiple layers, base layers, thermal layers. You might even go for, obviously, winter weight gloves, heated gloves. You might go for handlebar muffs, that kind of thing. You also might go for, you know, heated seats, heated handlebar grips, that kind of thing. There's lots of options there on the market to keep yourself warm, but the key element here is to dress for the ride, dress for the winter ride. It's going to be cold, And so you want to keep your comfort levels up. You want to make sure that you're comfortable, so you're not thinking about how cold you are or how uncomfortable you are or how wet you're getting, but rather you're focusing on the conditions ahead. Okay, so there's lots of options available. Now, one of the things that I always tend to do is that I always look outside of the motorcycle industry, if you will, and look at what other tips and strategies that I can pick up from elsewhere. So I might look to mountaineering, cycling is another one, you know, any outdoor pursuits, that kind of thing. I look at technology from other industries as well, and then I say, okay, can I use that in the motorcycle world or in my motorcycle world? Not in general, but in the way I ride. So that's the kind of thing I do. So, you know, especially in the winter, I'll always dress appropriately, and I dress for the ride, and it depends on what time of the day in the winter, whether I'm going on a night ride, an early morning ride, you know, an evening ride, an afternoon ride, determine how I would dress, really. So that's really key. Always dress for the ride, always dress for the winter, and, you know, keep yourself comfortable at all times. Okay, so the next thing, and this really goes back to, you know, I was saying before about thinking ahead about the winter hazards. Always plan for the worst scenario. Let's say you're riding along and you're going to encounter ice. Now, that's one of the things. You kind of make the decisions there. This whole 10 top tips, if you like, it's all about decision making. You know, are you going to make the right decisions at the right time to avoid having an accident, and basically you can get from point A to point B in the safest way. So plan ahead for the worst possible scenario. So ice, you know, do you feel comfortable in riding in these conditions? Do you think you'll be able to control yourself, your motorcycle, whatever in these conditions? Do you think that it's, you know, it's absolutely necessary to go on this ride? That kind of thing. When you're planning ahead and you're planning for the worst case scenarios, you're going to be much better suited and capable to be able to deal with those hazards, whatever it is. So always plan for ice, always plan for the worst. Now the next thing is to really think about your route, think about where you're going to go, and, you know, in what sort of weather conditions you're likely to encounter. Now, to give you an example, one of the routes that I take on my morning commute depends. Now, I don't always ride into work in the winter. It really depends on what the weather is, what the temperature is, what the moisture is, that kind of thing. So, but also what the elevation is. So now I know that I have to, you know, I'm basically at sea level, but then to get from point A to point B where I work, I have to go over some high hills, nearly, well, they're not mountains, but it's nearly a mountain. They're nearly at 1,000 feet, about 820 feet, I think. So that actually gets quite high, and it gets quite cold up there as well. So if the temperature's, you know, in and around freezing where I am, and the roads are wet, then the chances are where I'm going to go is there might be ice on the road, especially as I'll sometimes be riding on minor roads which might not be treated. Remember, they will only treat the major routes usually, and sometimes some councils, you know, they don't even treat the main routes properly. You know, there's an oversight or whatever it is, and that's been known to happen. Causes lots of accidents, both for cars, other vehicles, and for cycles as well. So unforeseen or unfactored ice patches, cold patches is a real issue. So really think about the route that you're taking, what hazards you like to take, what's the temperature like, what's the actual general weather going to be like. You know, really look out for, you know, weather forecasts, that kind of thing, and then really decide, okay, should I go on the ride, or should I go on this ride? Do I need to go on this ride? Is this my only mode of transport? Okay, right. Can I go in another vehicle? Have I got a car? That kind of thing. So, you know, it's really about planning ahead, thinking for the worst possible weather that you can encounter, the road surface, the worst road surface that you can encounter, and then really thinking about the route. Okay, if on a particular route you think, you know, I might most likely to encounter some bad weather there, then you think, well, actually, I might go on another route that keeps me at a lower level, lower altitude, away from poor weather, that kind of thing. It's just it's just really thinking about the head, not just going blindly where you need to go. Just think, okay, maybe I need to take a little detour to avoid certain weather conditions. Obviously, I've already mentioned it as well. The road conditions might be changeable, and obviously the councils may be putting the road chemicals down, road salts down as well. So that may or may not make the roads quite slippery, quite greasy. You get that kind of greasy film to it as well. And that can linger for a while in the winter, even when it hasn't rained for a couple of days. Sometimes you'll get that film, especially with areas that are quite covered by trees or whatever like that. So that's just something to bear in mind whenever you're out riding, or whenever you're planning to go out for a ride, in the winter. Okay, this leads me on to the next thing. No, it doesn't necessarily mean this is for first. When the first thing in the morning, but at any time, during the winter, you've got to ask yourself, do you have to ride today? Do you have to go out on the bike? Now, if it's a pleasurable thing or whatever, not necessary to ride, and it is really poor weather conditions or really icy conditions, that kind of thing, then you might want to think, well, actually, let's leave it for today. Let's go on another day. Now, there's nothing. Now, I ride all year round. It's not a problem for me. But it doesn't necessarily mean I ride every day in the winter, or at all times of the day in the winter, because I pick and choose when it's most suitable and when I think it's safe to do so. Remember, at the end of the day, we're talking about tyres, narrow tyres, small contact patches on road surfaces that are not conducive to good traction, good grip. So, you've got to think, well, okay, is it really going to work out today? Am I even going to enjoy this ride? Or are you going out with friends? If you're going out in a group, what about the experiences of everybody within the group? Are they going to enjoy it? Are they going to be able to cope with all the demands of winter riding as well? So that's just something to be aware of as well. Do you really need to go out for a ride today? Okay, so let's say you have decided you want to go out for a ride. Well, what's the general approach to it? Well, basically, you need to ride for the winter conditions. Your style needs to change. You need to ride a lot slower. Now, speed isn't everything. Give yourself lots of time to make decisions as well. You might be uncomfortable on the bike, whatever reason. So, your thought processes might be slowed down a little bit. You might be distracted because you're thinking about the cold, or you're concerned about the weather conditions. So all these kind of things, if you slow down a little bit, then you're actually going to give yourself a lot more time to make decent decisions. And also to be able to review those decisions, which is really important. And also to factor in all the hazards and the conditions that you are encountering at the moment, and then likely to encounter on your route again. So all these points are kind of interconnected, really, and it's all down to making decisions and mentality as well. The other thing is about riding upright. Now, I don't mean, you have to ride upright like this, just like old Grandad Perkins riding. But what I'm talking about is riding upright and keeping the bike upright, not leaning the bike over so much. Yes, steering with the handlebars as well, some counter steering, but, what I'm saying is, a combination of speed and keeping the bike upright. So you're slowing down, and effectively what you're doing is riding conservatively. Now, I'm not saying you go start voting for the Tory party, but you know what I mean. You're actually just riding a lot more conservative, a lot slower, a lot more with thought about your own safety, about the bike performance, about the tyre performance, that kind of thing. Let's face it, in the winter, the roads are going to be wet, slimy, icy, cold. Tyres are going to be cold. You want to make sure the tyres are, inflated properly, the correct tyre pressures according to the basic. When you go out for a ride, you just want to take it easy. Go out on the ride, give yourself lots of time, lots of space. Don't lean the bike over too much, especially when the roads are, wet or slimy or damp in any way, shape or form, because it can easily catch you out. If you're going out on the back roads, then just be expected that the conditions of the road surface will change every few hundred yards, for example, depending if you've got tree cover, you've got hedge cover, that kind of thing. You might have frost on one side of a hedge, you might have, a road that is clear, then you'll go around a corner and then the sun is behind the hedge, so therefore the road is still in shade. It might really be icy there. So you've got to really think about where you're riding. Just ride conservatively, ride more upright, ride slower as well. Really, all we're talking about, you know, I'm not saying that you ride like Driving Miss Daisy or anything like that, but what I'm saying is that you just got to think about your own well-being and, you know, the bike safety, your safety, and others around you as well. Also think about this when you're out riding. You need to consider not only how you're riding, but also how others are driving, how drivers of other vehicles are driving as well. They might be a little bit more cautious. They might be driving a bit more erratically for whatever reason. They might be not having full control of the vehicle. They might be slipping on ice as well, you know, or on the slimy roads. So just bear that in mind whenever you're out riding. Not only think about you and how you're riding, but also think about the problems that other drivers might be having with their own driving as well. And really, I'm not talking about through any fault of their own. They're just having a tough time on the roads as well. Winter riding conditions, the weather conditions might be challenging for all users. So just don't think about yourself, think about everybody, and that will help you to ride more conservatively and more cautiously. Okay, so the next thing you really want to look at this comes back to, in my industry, we look at, whenever we're making a decision, we look at making that decision, getting all the available resources, planning, that kind of thing, but then we review that decision. So whenever we're doing something, whenever you're on your bike and you're out on a ride, and you could say you could adopt this process, this procedure, if you like, at any time throughout the whole year, but especially during the winter, you're riding along and you've got to ask yourself, is this a good idea? Am I making the right decision? Is it still okay for me to ride on this road? Should I pull over? Should I just stop? Should I turn back? All this kind of thing. Is it a good idea? So you've got to enter like a loop system where you're just constantly feeding yourself information, taking in all the information around you, and also considering yourself, considering other vehicles or other drivers of other vehicles, and then making a go, no-go decision. Is it still okay for me to ride? So that's what you're looking at. Is this a good idea to carry on? So the next thing you want to look at is, well, something that I think is really important in terms of your general approach to riding in general throughout the whole year, but also especially when it comes to winter riding. You have to adopt a winter riding mentality. Now, I'm not just talking about being cautious and then riding more conservatively or anything like that. I'm actually talking about the whole package. Whether you decide to go out on the bike in the first place, are you going to be thinking and reacting? Sorry, it's about thinking and making decisions and then reacting to those decisions, so you have this complete feedback system, this loop system that's constantly in play. It's having a professional approach to winter riding. It's basically not taking those risks that you don't need to, and not pushing the bike and yourself towards any edge of any envelope. You're actually very much contained within a big safety bubble, and that's what you really want to look at. So always have a winter riding mentality. You're always thinking about your comfort. Now, comfort for me is really important whenever I'm riding, whether it's in the summer, I don't want to be too hot, so I'll change my riding gear. In the winter, I don't want to be cold. One of the things that I suffer with is cold hands, really cold hands, so I always make effort to find any sort of different strategy to keep my hands warm. I have heated grips. I've got hand guards on my bike as well. But I also ride with handlebar muffs, layers, and you can't even move. You're so rigid. So what you need to do is just have lots of multiple layers that are thin layers, but make sure that you can still move around the bike and move, up and down and maneuver that bike properly. You're unhindered. That's the most important thing. So that you're comfortable. Keep your body warm, your internal warm, and then and well, really identify where you're likely to get cold and is it really going to affect you. So if your feet really get cold, okay, maybe then for you, you might want to add extra socks or thermal socks or change your boots or that kind of thing. If it's your hands, like me, that's the major problem, then obviously, address that specific issue as well. Obviously, multiple layers, look at scarves or neck tubes, that kind of thing to keep your neck warm. Anything that you can do that is going to keep you comfortable on the bike, so that it's not necessarily just about keeping you warm and dry, focusing not on how uncomfortable you are, but you're focusing on the road and the conditions that you're having to encounter. The next thing is now I said tyres here, but really it's the whole bike. Okay, we're talking, is it roadworthy? Is it roadworthy for the winter? What about tread depth? If you've got a lot of tread depth, what kind of tyre are you riding in the winter? Is it, what type of bike are you riding? Is it kind of a sports replica bike? Are you wearing, you riding with tyres that really grippy? Well, they might not be good for the winter. They might not be good for the wet conditions, or certainly the icy conditions. And again, name me a tyre that is good in the ice. All this kind of stuff. So you've got to make sure that you cross match your bike, your tyres, whatever, to the conditions. But also, whatever tyres you've got on, you've got to make sure that they're roadworthy. They're not split. They're inflated to the right pressure. They got enough tread depth on whatever it is. So make sure that the tyres and the bike is roadworthy and suitable for the conditions that you're going to be riding in. Okay, so the next thing is surface. Now, I touched on this right at the start. It's making sure that whenever you're riding, you're fully aware of what the road surface is like and potentially what it's likely to be. Think about, let's say if you've had heavy rain overnight, or you're going to be riding in heavy rain, then you've got to be looking at standing water. You've got to be looking, at flooded areas, like puddles that may be masking potholes, that kind of thing. As we already talked about ice, we talked about, councils treating the roads, so you've got to look at slimy roads, debris on the roads, that kind of thing. If you're riding on the back roads, looking at the country roads, look at mud on the road as well. So this all goes back to, analysing where you're riding, taking in all that information, then riding conservatively, riding more upright, get a better view of the road ahead, that kind of thing. Speed isn't the issue, but riding with erratic speed. As I say, when I say ride slowly and upright, I'm not talking about, we only ride at 15 miles an hour, that kind of thing. What I'm talking about, you can still ride with speed, but certainly nowhere near the speed that you should be at, let's say, during the summer months, for example, or in favourable conditions. So just always think about that surface. And then the last thing, it's an all-encompassing thing, really. It's the style of your riding. And so you really have to change the style of your riding to match the winter conditions. Now, when you're riding in the summer or in the spring with your friends, you might be a bit more, enthusiastic about your riding. But in the winter, you really need to bring everything back into the center. It is about riding contained. It's about playing the percentages. It's about being cautious, but also thinking about the problem, thinking about the variables, and then just not making decisions that you'll later regret, or not taking chances that you don't need to take, basically. So your riding style and the style and your mentality is you need to switch it to a winter mode, if you like. And this is the whole point about winter riding. You need to adopt a winter mode, a winter riding mentality. Anyway, so hopefully this has helped you all, guys. And we'll just get rid of that. There we go. This is all new to me here, look. Hopefully you've enjoyed that and you found that useful at least. Anyway, I hope it does. I say it isn't specific types. You can all ride, and that's not I'm not here to teach you how to ride or that kind of thing. This is really about You know, it's a mental thing more than anything. If you ever speak to lots of, you know, elite sportsmen or anything, or professionals at the cutting edge of their industry, it's never really about their sort of their knowledge or their aptitude or their, you know, their talent. It's always a mental thing. It's a mentality. It's a mental approach to whatever you're doing. So you might be, you know, really talented in a particular field, but if you don't apply yourself in that particular field or whatever you're doing, the chances are at some point you're going to fail, and you're going to fail big time. It's the same with riding. It's the same with any discipline. You know, it is about a mentality, how you adopt, how you take in information, how you make decisions, and how you ride, in this case ride a motorcycle, is how you ride in those conditions, in the winter conditions. Anyway, so this has been the best winter riding tips, top 10 tips I suppose, if you like, well, basically, you know, we just don't want you to come a cropper, and don't want you to come a cropper and well, come off in the winter. That's not really what we want. Anyway, so I hope you enjoyed the live stream, and so if you've got if you're watching this later, please leave lots of comments below. Please subscribe to the channel as well. That'd be really cool. And well, be safe on the roads. You know, keep up warm, wrap up warm. Think ahead. Just think conservatively, ride conservatively, put yourself into that winter mode, and well, I'll catch you on the next live stream or the next video, whenever that is. So lots of videos coming out on the channel on a daily basis. 3 regular updates, 3 regular uploads, I should say. It's always a Monday and a Wednesday and a Friday night, but I've got a bit of a work ethic, so I'm always trying to add extra videos whenever I can. So I'm constantly looking at different aspects of the interests of the channel, and trying to produce videos or live streams according to what I think you might like. Anyway, so I hope you do, hope you like it. Leave lots of comments. If you've got any advice about what you'd like for me to talk about, or what you'd like to see, what you'd like to discuss, that kind of thing. If you'd like to know a little bit more about the rider safety aspect of it, so it's not predominantly what this channel is about, but certainly I'll still talk about that, and that was a big part of my life for many years. But any kind of aspect. If you want to talk about motorcycle publishing, magazines, which again was another part of my life for quite a few years, you know, with the Enduro Rider Gazette that I had, and Enduro Rider Media. So, you know, feel free to ask, leave lots of comments as well. Anyway, I'll catch you on the next video or live stream. Cheers now.